Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the complicated world of dating. Those of you who know me, you know that I've lived in many countries around the world, and you also know that I've met many British people around the world. Some of these people have been dating in other cultures. It seems to me that one of the biggest reasons why British people are not successful at dating is because of our politeness. It's very hard to understand what's happening in someone's mind if they don't tell you. But British people expect you to know, not by the words that the British person says, but by the way the British person says the words. For example, if you ask me, "How are you?" you get the same word, which is fine, but you might get fine, meaning I'm happy, fine, meaning I'm neither happy nor unhappy, or yeah, well, fine, I suppose, which clearly is showing that I'm not happy. And we expect you to read that word and how it is said. We don't expect you to just take the word fine and think that we are okay. Now, imagine that on a much bigger scale. One of the reasons why British people who date people from other cultures are completely unsuccessful at dating is because they don't feel listened to. People in other countries are very authentic. They often show their emotions and they speak with great pleasure and pride and passion about what they want to say. Let me give you an example. So the British person says, "Oh, how was your weekend when you went to France?" And you say, "Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. Let me tell you, because the food was great, and I met my friend John, and then we all went to the mountains, and we spent there a few days, and it was just beautiful, and everything in black and perfect, and everything." And the British person is looking and saying, "Yeah, yeah," because obviously you want to share your nice moment with the British person. And then you spend another 5 minutes saying, "Oh, and let me show you the photograph, and it was wonderful, and everything, and excellent." And the British person is still nodding, and the conversation is becoming a bit dry. Why is that? Well, it's because the British person is waiting to be asked, "How was your weekend?" They're waiting for the conversation to be reciprocated. So if you talk about yourself in that way again and again and again for, let's say, half an hour, and then gradually the conversation comes to a close, then the British person is waiting for you to ask the same question: "How was your weekend?" But you're expecting the British person just to interject and to say things like, "Oh, well, I remember, when I went to France that time, I had the same experience, and it was beautiful, and it was wonderful." But because of our politeness, we don't do that. So, if this happens a few times, then the British person thinks, "This person always talks about themselves, but they don't ask me how I am. And you know what? I've had quite a rough week living here. This isn't my country, this isn't my language, and really I need support. And this person doesn't seem to care what I'm doing because he's just talking about himself." Now, you and I both know that the person, the non-British person in the conversation, isn't doing anything wrong. He's just saying how he feels. That's all. Yeah. And he doesn't feel that he needs to say, "And how are you?" because he's expecting the person to say, "Oh, and yeah, I'm fine too," and everything. But because those words are missing, the British person doesn't feel able to express. It's kind of like they've been silenced in the British mind. I'm just really using this as an example to show you the cultural differences. On one hand, someone is very authentically, passionately saying how they are. And on the other hand, the British person is feeling that, first of all, they can't express their feelings unless they're given permission to do so. And secondly, we are not really very spontaneous. We are not very good at interjecting into conversations to talk about something similar that happened to us. So in the early days of dating, this can be a really big problem. Not only this, if you imagine somebody saying, oh, give me the, I don't know, the sauce, the salsa, give me the mayonnaise from the table, and they don't say, I'd like you to pass the mayonnaise from the table, or would you mind passing me the tissues, for example? Or even if you're passionately talking about food and you say, oh, you really have to try this, it's absolutely delicious and everything, and look at this menu, you must try this dish. The British person is going to be a little bit uncomfortable with the emotions which are being given there, because British people, we're not so good at emotional things. We like to be asked, we like to be given space to make our own choices. Of course, it's not always like that, and there is a little bit of a stereotype, okay, with what I'm saying here, but the general rule is true. You need to be really careful if you're dating a British person. All you have to do is to remember to say, and you? And what's been happening with you? Just to give them permission, because otherwise they'll just run away. And I've seen this again and again and again, where the British person becomes more and more withdrawn because the conversation seems to be dominated by someone else's voice. And it's really hard to understand, but it's easy to fix. All you have to do is to ask the British person, just give them a bit of space and say, so, what about you? Feeling okay? Remembering to do that is really, really important. Even as a teacher, I remember when I first got married, because I'm not married to a British person, because the person that I'm married to didn't always say thanks, please, and use direct communication, give me, take, at the dinner table and things like that. I was thinking, oh my God, this person is a savage. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to these kind of behaviors. And also, I have to say that if you move to the UK, very basic things, even in a relationship, like please, thank you, I'd like, are really, really important. And if you don't try with these things, then you're kind of doomed for failure. And it's not because British people don't care, it's just the way in which we express emotion is in a quiet way that needs a safe space to do that. Of course, there are British people who happily, would be much more open, but in general, I think British people need alcohol for that, to relax and to kind of get out of themselves. We're not very good at doing this kind of thing. So you really need to understand that if you are in a situation where you are dating a British person. You need to make sure that you create a space for the other person to speak, for the other person to express, because they're not just going to jump into a conversation with you. That's my experience. And in certain cultures where maybe people have permission to show more passion than others, you really need to remember that. So, the golden rule is, if you're dating a British person, remember, show a little bit of space. Be as passionate as you want, say everything you want, but then you have to invite the British person into the conversation. They're not just going to jump in and tell you, oh, really, that happened to me 2 weeks ago or whatever. If you Don't do that. You're going to hear silence. And then you're going to wonder, why is this person not telling me anything? Because you haven't invited them to do so. It's a little bit strange, but it's just our culture. So there we are. That's a very brief guide to British dating. It doesn't mean that you have to walk on eggshells all the time. I hope I haven't exaggerated this too much, but it does mean that you just have to be a little bit more careful to ensure that you give someone a space. All right? Okay, good luck if you're dating British people. I wouldn't do it, but there we are. Okay, see you. Bye bye.